Hello, this is Nikki in Niagara coming to you from Niagara Falls, Canada. And today I'm going to go through my reading wrap-up for March. That's a bit late. It's a lot late because it's going to be pretty soon time for the April wrap-up. But just couldn't get to it until now. So hopefully I can remember enough of these books to make it interesting. So while I do that, I will be coloring. And I'm coloring out of this new book from Belba family called Stone Mosaic, and it is the cream edition. Usually I get the black editions of things, but I just, for some reason, I thought these would look nicer in the cream edition. Then they'd be more like regular mandalas. So, we'll get started, but first of all, the first book that I read this month was Kirby Genesis by Kurt Busiek and many others. This is a graphic novel, and it's about how these alien villains come to Earth to destroy it, and so alien superheroes arrive trying to, fighting the villains and trying to save Earth. So this was a reread for me, and like last time, it was like reading it for a first time because I'd totally forgotten it, and I have kind of forgotten the story again, but I really, really enjoy it, so I gave it 5 stars. And we'll read what I wrote. This was a reread for me, but felt like a first-time read. I'm not as into superheroes as I once was, but enjoyed this very much. 2 alien visitors to Earth bring about a slew of alien hero and villain arrivals who fight each other and Earth. The main villains wanting to bring about Earth's fall. It's a whirlwind ride based on an old-time comic illustrator Jack Kirby's characters. Ultimately, though, there is just too much going on, with way too many newly introduced characters to make a lot of sense. However, that doesn't take away from the fun factor. So yeah, it's like they bring in all of Kirby's characters that he ever created, and if you don't know him, this is all new to you, so, boom, 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 boom with characters, but it's still a lot of fun, even if you can't remember who was who at certain points. So, yeah. So the next book that I read was Edging by Michael Schultz. I'll put the picture up there. So Michael Schultz only has 2 books, and I read his previous one, which was absolutely excellent, and same with this one. I enjoyed this just as much, giving it a 5 star. There's a new drug called Intense, which increases your heart rate, causes hallucinations, and brings you nightmares of your fears. You get to star in your own horror movie. So it's like getting high, but instead of like seeing, experiencing like a good, I don't know the terms for drugs, a good high, you're getting a bad high, but you enjoy it so much. It's like that feeling you get when you're watching horror movies. You get scared and frightened, but you're having fun. So this takes your fears to the ultimate point, and a lot of people get high on that. An alien being passing Earth senses the fear, and since he eats fear, he comes down to feed on humans. This is an intense, vivid, and horrific story, and has exactly everything I love in a horror book. The set are a set of creepy twin 5-year-olds, and I love creepy kid books too. So yeah, I've been doing a real big twin thing lately, and just if I have a book and it says twins, I've been reading it. So that's one of those. So 2 5 stars in a row there. Next book that I read is Three Black Swans by Caroline Cooney. I can't quite remember this one, so let's read. Missy has a nagging feeling about her cousin Claire. They finish each other's sentences and end up coming to school in the same outfits. They don't go to the same school, they go to different schools, but at the end of the day, they'll talk to each other and find out they wore the same thing. So she comes up with a plan, this is Missy, and takes a video, which ends up on YouTube. So they pretend to be twins, and so we got the twin thing again, because they look a lot alike. And they take this video where they're being interviewed as twins, long-lost twins who had finally found each other. And, well, that goes viral, and it causes a huge ruckus. So this opens a can of worms, which rocks her family's world. A fast, quick-paced read that I couldn't put down. An unusual story. It kept me hooked. Highly recommend. And likable characters that... I didn't finish my last sentence here. Okay. Oh, here, this is what it says. An unusual story with likable characters that kept me hooked. There we are. Highly recommend. Yes, again, I really like Caroline Cooney. She writes middle grade and young adult thrillers, mostly. She does write other stuff too, but that's mostly what she does. And that was a fabulous book. Really a different take on the story that it did. So the next thing that I read was my short story book. I finished the one I had been reading. This one is an author's collection. It's by Christy DeMeester, and it's called Everything That's Underneath. Let's put that there. So I didn't really like this. It was pretty weird and surreal, and I didn't get a lot of it, or I did get it, but it just kind of went, whoa, that's just like, that's weird, and I like weird, but I don't like weird that is like this. So let's read what it is. I gave it a 2. I don't give out too many 2s because I usually don't read books that are, I usually DNF books that are less than a 3, but this one I read through. All these stories of the weird focus on dreams, shadows, and mists. Everything is very surreal, leaving nothing for the reader to grasp. They mostly fell flat for me, with only a couple that were more than just okay. So basically what I said. So yeah, not recommend that. But hey, if that's your type of thing, you might like it. Next was an ebook, Monsters, Morality, and Murder, The Manson Women and Me. So I gave this a 2 as well, because, I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like it's going to be like, you know, an in-depth look at the lives of the Manson women, and, you know, what made them join him, and, you know, because they were all like, they weren't troubled kids. They were all pretty much, you know, came from middle-class backgrounds, and, you know, they decided they wanted to do the, you know, hippie thing, and they left home and went out to LA, where they found, oh, I'm not sure if it's LA, but anyways, to California, where they met Manson. But no, it's not about that. It's about the author, and how she finds, she was the same age as them back in the day. She was just a little bit older than them, and thinking, and coming from the same background as them, and thinking that she, you know, the same, you know, you know, the saying, like, if not for God, then there go I, type of thing. But, you know, how it could have been, easily have happened to her as well. So whenever she mentions the Manson women, she goes on about stories about herself. So yeah, really way too much. I didn't get the book because I wanted to hear about the author. I got it because I wanted to know about the Manson women. So the author interviews Leslie Van Houten and Patricia Krenwinkel, two of the Manson women, to find out how prison has changed them, and who they are now. Unfortunately, the author spends most of the book comparing the women to herself, being around the same age. We find out the author's life story and find out about her much more than the women. And she didn't have an exactly very exciting life, so her stories aren't exactly intense or anything. And there's absolutely nothing new about the Manson women or the Manson case that's revealed. So it's, you know, just a rehash of old stuff and the author's story thrown in there. So the next book was The House of Thunder by Dean Koontz. So this was one of the books that I got from the Abominable, I was going to say the Abominable Snowman, the Abominable, I have a hard time with that word, book club. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4, but it's kind of flown from my mind right now. So let's read what I had to say about it. A woman wakes up from a coma and starts having hallucinations about some men who killed her boyfriend in college. They are threatening her, and though she knows they are dead, she believes the hallucinations are real. A really old school horror, and I loved it. It was written in 1982. That's not really having hallucinations about some... Oh, you know, I think a whole... Yeah, I guess I can't really tell you about that. But it is the base... It was written in 1982, and the basis of it is about the Cold War, and they're set in this world of the Cold War, where the Russians and the States it's versus each other all the time. So it's set in the middle of that, and that kind of it creeps into our story. So I can't really tell you any much more than that because it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen until further into the book. But yeah, really good. I enjoyed it. So if you like Cold War horror stories, then there's one for you. Next was Nowhere to Hide by Joan Hall Hovey. And this was just a random book on my Kindle that I got some time ago. And I decided to read it, went into it blind, and I'm not really remembering much. I gave it a... Oh, I should say that the Dean Koontz book I gave a 4. And this book that I'm talking about now, Nowhere to Hide, I gave a 3. So let's read what I wrote about it. Ellen's sister, who has just signed her first record contract, has been killed. More bodies are found, and then they know it is a serial killer. Ellen, though devastated, is also angry. So she goes on a local news station and talks directly to the killer, daring him to try and get her. I enjoyed the book and had fun. The ending was intense and fast. It's not a book I'll remember long. However, it is your standard 3-star thriller. So yeah, a good ride, fun to read, but not a long-lasting thing in your mind. So yeah, of course I recommend it if you want to have a quick, fast-paced thriller. Okay, so that was the end of using this book. Then I started into my new one. I don't have as much space to write about the books, so they are shorter reviews than what I have been doing. So the next book I read was Nothing But Blackened Teeth, and that also is from a Abominable Book Club book. So I was really looking forward to reading this. I thought, with the Japanese yokai being a central part of the story, I thought I would really enjoy it. Fortunately, it's not really anything like what I thought it would be, and I only gave it 3 stars. Yeah, I mean, I don't say don't read it. It's okay, but it's not something that you need to read to be fully read on Japanese horror. So this is by Cassandra Kaw, and I gave it 3 stars. A group of friends, 2 who are getting married, go to an ancient mansion in Japan to get married. They are there alone and learn it is cursed. So they've arrived the evening before the wedding, and they're spending the night in the mansion and checking it out and all that kind of stuff. At least I think it's the night before the wedding. It feels like it is. So they're alone there, and they learn from one of the members of their party that the house is haunted. Or sorry, it's not haunted. It's cursed. So the book is full of yokai, Japanese demons. The scare factor. Okay. Full of yokai, which are Japanese demons. The scare factor falls flat. The characters are all unlikable, and I didn't care what happened. I almost DNF'd it, but since it was so short, it's 123 pages, I made myself finish reading it, and it was just kind of like, well, whatever. It's not as good as it looks like it's going to be. I love this cover. This is the British cover, and it's a bit different than the American one. I think the American one has a close-up of the face, but I like this. Really like this. She's got bones and a couple of skulls around her at the bottom. The next book I read was, okay, so I finished with that color. Let me get the next color out, light blue for 14. And let's see. I'm going to color there, and then we get in here. So let me get up here. That's it. Okay, so random book from my Kindle that I just randomly picked and started reading it, and this is the Korean word for butterfly, and this is a historical fiction, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Set against the backdrop of the 2002 World Cup, which took place in Korea, and at that time, a U.S. tank ran over 2 Korean teenage girls. This was a big, both the World Cup and the incident with the tank and the girls became huge headlines at the time. It was not something that I was aware of, so I found the backdrop there quite interesting. So this is at a time when anti-Americanism was on the rise in Korea, back in 2002. Nowadays, Korea is considered one of the most pro-American countries out there, but at this time there was anti-Americanism going on. The book is told in 3 voices and is set around an English teaching school. Themes of love and children run through all the lives. We have a young couple teaching English with faked credentials, a secretary at the school, and a male administrator. The book is full of emotion, and I enjoyed the quick read. So it's just under 300 pages, and I really enjoyed the story of it's basically about the 3 characters, and their lives, and centers around a school for teaching English as a second language. And so it's a character-driven story. And yeah, I really liked it. That's what I like, is character-driven stories. Oh, let's just finish up this one. Then, the next book I read was, for the True Crime Book Club, I read Lady Killers, Deadly Women Throughout History by Tori Telfer. So this, I'm going to read what I wrote because I'll say it better than what I will from my head. Each chapter focuses on an historical case of a female serial killer. These range from the Middle Ages to the 1950s. So there's no modern women in here. Told in an easy storytelling narrative, the cases are very interesting, and each helps us discover the similarities between female killers, though each one is very unique. The cases mostly move away from the typical white American and are set in different locations throughout the world and back in history. And I enjoyed it very much. So just to give you an idea, I'll tell you who's in the book. I had heard of some of them, but I think there was more. No, I think it's a combination. Probably 50-50 of who I'd heard of and who I hadn't. So there's Elizabeth Bathory, Nanny Doss, Elizabeth Ridgway, Rhea and Sakina. Now, I believe that one took place in India or Pakistan or thereabout, and that one was really, really good. So the other ones that I've heard of are Marianne Cotton, Kate Bender from the Bender family, and then other ones I hadn't heard of are El Hassan, Anna Marie Hahn, Mary Madeline, the Marquise de Brinvilliers. So really good if you're interested in female serial killers. This will introduce you to some new ones and will give you an entertaining story, mini biographies of their life and their killings. So then this month I have been reading, and we'll just do these all together. I have been reading the Grimm Fairy Tales series by Zenescope, or Zenescope. Not sure how you pronounce that. But I've read lots of the Grimm Fairy Tale Presents books, but I've never actually read the base Grimm Fairy Tales story. So this is kind of like soft porn, I guess you might want to say. There's lots of scantily clad women wearing nothing but strings, and there's some nudity, and there's lots and lots and lots of blood and violence. So if you like sex and gore, that's what you're going to get from these. But on top of that, the illustrations are just absolutely gorgeous. And you might not want to look at this because they are gory. The illustrations are just absolutely gorgeous. And the story is really well told. So each book deals with 5 or 6 fairy tales. Sometimes there's 2-parters, so you'll get 5 different tales altogether. And so each one is told, but the main storyline is that there's this woman who has the book, Grimm's Fairy Tale. Now, she's not exactly human, but she's some sort of, well, she looks human, but she's some sort of paranormal person who goes around with this book, and she gives it to people as to teach them a lesson because they're about to do something wrong that's going to ruin their lives. And so they read the story, and then they make the right decision. But by the second book, they're not making the right decisions anymore. They're reading the story and going, oh, well, that's dumb, or that doesn't apply to me. And they're like making the wrong choices. And then eventually get to the point where some do and some don't. And Serena, that's her name, she meets her equivalent, and her name is, I want to say Beatrice, something like that. So she meets her, and she does the same thing, but she's taken it in a different turn. She's an evil force or evil being, and that's how she uses the book, and the two of them clash together. So that's the overarching story that's going on while we get told the individual tales. And every book I give a 5, because I just absolutely love the retellings, I love the art, and I love the stories. So there, I read the first 3 volumes in March. Then the next book I read was called Clown Flesh. Excuse me, just let me take a drink. And it's by Tim Curran. No, I guess I can't read while I'm doing this one. And this was a horror book, which I really, really liked, and I gave it 4 stars. Upon the arrival of the worst blizzard ever in Craw Falls, real clowns, not men in costumes, invade the little town, killing the residents. Not having much more of a plot, this cosmic horror is full-on violence. Killing after killing is interspersed with the residents who are out there trying to get the clowns before they get them. Action-packed fun horror. Yeah, and so it was. So the plot was very simple. They're here killing us. Let's try and stay alive and kill them instead. And so that's what they do. And all along, the clowns, they're like creatures, aliens, or whatever. It's kind of hard to tell what exactly they are, but they look like clowns until you get close, and then you see that they're not people wearing costumes. They really are what they are until you find out what they really are. So yeah, lots of blood and violence, and definitely a slasher type of a slasher type of book, and a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. In case I didn't say, I gave it 4 stars. So then, at this point, is when I finished my next anthology, and this is a collection of stories by different authors, and this is part of the British Library Tales of the Weird, and there are a lot of books in this series, and I am so glad I found them. First of all, this book is like really nice. It's matte covers, it's well made, it's a nice size, the paper's nice, it's just like a really good book to hold in your hand. So each one is short stories from, like the 1800s or so, and they're all like creepy stories, tales of the weird. So this one is called Minor Hauntings, Chilling Tales of Spectral Youth, edited by Jen Baker. So these are ghost stories where the ghosts are children, youths. And I really, really enjoyed it. One thing that I really like, and which is kind of a deal breaker for me with short story collections, I'm really upset if they don't have this, but before each story we have, and they can put this before or they can put it after, it doesn't matter, though I like it to come before, is a little bio of, just very short bio of the author. This is Charlotte Riddell, and then it gives you a publishing history of the story that we're that we're reading, and it also gives us the date that the story was first published. To me, that's very important as well. Even if it's only in the table, only if it's in the copyright where it gives the date that each story was written. Preferably on the story, like here it says 1878, and then we get the title of the story. Sometimes it can be in the table of the contents where it just tells you the date of the story. Sometimes it's in the copyright where each story is listed with its copyright date, its original publishing date actually. So that's also a deal breaker for me for a short story book. If it doesn't tell me the date, I get upset, and I usually end up Googling the story and finding out when it was written myself, because it's really important if you're reading not historical as in historical fiction, but you're reading historical stories. If you know what year the book was written and you know what world the author is living in, and that has a reflection in the story of how it's written or words that are going to be used, or if the story is contemporary, we need to know what contemporary is for the story. So yeah, I could go on about what I like in short stories or not. In case you don't know, for quite a long time now, I've been reading a short story every day of my life. So I go through a lot of anthologies, and I know a lot about short stories. So let's see if I wrote anything down that I haven't said. This was fantastic. I'm so glad I found this series, British Library Tales of the Weird. Every story was excellent. I'd rate each of them a 4 with a couple of 5s. A folk tale before each story. Ah, yes, I forgot to mention that. Before each story is a folk tale with its source given that shows an introduction of what kind of ghost the story actually has, like the folklore background of where the story originated. So for this one, The Walnut Tree House by Charlotte Riddell, there is a Grimm's fairy tale, The Stolen Pennies, which was written in 1812. So that's kind of like our background for the ghost. And an author mini-biography, and most of all, each is given the first date of publication. These range from the 1830s to the 1920s, so that's the type of stories you're going to be reading. Really, really recommend if you like classic literature, horror classic literature. So the next book I read, just turned my computer on. Next book I read was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and this was for a book club. This was for the Literally Dead book club. And this is a decisive book. There's a lot of people who hate it and a lot of people who like it. Mostly the reason that people don't like it is because it's slow. It just starts off as a story and, a little bit of a mystery going on. This woman, she calls her brother up and tells him that she is going to arrive there in the morning, and he's like, "Oh, not that convenient, but hey sis, I'll be ready for you. So meet you at the doorway, in the morning or something, or." What is it? Oh yeah, she says she's going to be there in the morning. She calls him in the evening. And so then when she gets there, he's not there. And she ends up spending a few days there, and she realizes that something's wrong. He's not coming back. And then there are other people in the apartment complex, and she goes around talking to them, saying, hey, have you seen my brother, and where is he, that type of thing. And she kind of finds out that everybody here in this building could possibly have been the one who wanted to get rid of her brother, and that something, drastic has happened to him. So that's the story, and it just very slowly starts from the beginning and goes along and becomes just a little bit more, until you get to the ending, which is like a wild rush of reveals and twists and stuff until you find out what was going on. And I did know part of the solution. Didn't know it all, but I did know a major part of it. I figured it out pretty early on, and it can be. There's the clues are given. You can figure it out on your own. So yeah, so I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I had a great ride with that. Then I read the, what am I doing? I've done that one. I've done that one. Oh yeah, I needed yellow for the 2s. So we got 2s in here. I'm going to go up there. Okay. So the next book that I read was The Amendment. And this is a sequel to, it was by Kirsten Modglin. And this is a sequel to her The Arrangement, which was awesome. Totally awesome. And I gave that 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. So The Amendment, in the first book, they have an arrangement where it's going to be okay for once a week for them to, each of them to have a date and, possibly have sexual relations with other people. And the rule is that they're not allowed to ask each other about what's going on. However, the first time they go out, it ends up being the people that they're seeing end up being quite deadly. So that's the first book. This second one takes place right where the first one ends. So you do need to read the first one. These basically could be one book if you put them together. They're both very short. This one's 214, and I think the first one was even shorter. So now that all their secrets came out in the first book, they are trying to put their marriage back together. And they have come upon an amendment to their original arrangement, and they're trying to see if they can make this new reality work. We learn a lot more about the characters, and in such a short book, that means that takes the place of all the twists that Kirsten usually has in her books. There's not as many in this because we're getting background. There's not room in the 200 pages to add that, as well as tell us about the characters. So it's not as exciting as The Arrangement by any means, but it's still good. I mean, it's Kirsten Modglin, right? And I loved the ending. It was a really good ending. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Next book is, my favorite book of the month is The Other by Thomas Tryon. So this is psychological horror, and it was originally written in the 70s. And this is about two twin boys, and one of them is your normal average. I think they're 10 years old. No, they're older than that. They're young teens anyways, maybe like 12, 13. And they, one of them's your regular, normal 12-year-old boy, and, he's a happy person, and he just lives a normal kid life. His brother, however, is evil. He does evil things. He does bad things, and he does worse things, which are evil. And then basically that's all I can say. The book's divided into 3 different parts. And things are going along as they are going along until someone dies, and then more people die. So the twist in this, I'm not going to say any more about what the book's about, because that's really all you need to know. the twists are just absolutely amazing. It just totally threw me for a loop when I found out what was happening. It just like totally changed the whole story that you were reading. And I can see myself reading this again, like even though I know the big twist and what happens, but it'd be fun to read it again and see where the clues are, to see where they lie, you know, to what really is going on. So yeah, mind-blowing is what I put in my little review here. So it's about the family, the twins and their family, and their neighborhood of eccentric characters. Yeah, it's when people start dying that the gothic atmospheric horror settles in. This really plays with the reader's perceptions. Amazing, fantastic book. I'd like to read more of his. And then, so that was for a book club. That it's called Horror in 24. So then the next book that I read, okay, I need another color. 18 is just normal green. Let's be this one. So the next book I read was a Kindle book. It's called Murder at Minnesota Point. And this was a NetGalley book, I believe. Yeah, this was a NetGalley book, and the book is going to be released in, I didn't write it down, but I think it's going to be released in July. It's called Murder at Minnesota Point. It was okay. I gave it 3. I gave it 3 stars. It's not exactly staying in my head right now. It is a true crime. That's what I was trying to say, a true crime. So let's read what I wrote. It's only 200 pages. A short true crime detailing the murder of Lena Olson in Duluth, Minnesota, 1894. And that's why I read it, is because I love historical true crime. I love it more than you know, stuff that's going on today. I love reading about true crime from the 1800s and the early 1900s. So she was found on a beach and remained unidentified for quite some time. This is a rather straightforward narrative of the police procedures of the times, how they went about identifying the body, then the perpetrator, and ultimately finding him. So I called it mediocre. It's not something I'm going to recommend that you run out and buy, but if you want to, want to get yourself into what a crime investigation in 1894 is like, that's what you'll get from this. And finally, the last book that I read was a gift from my sister, and this is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the first in a trilogy, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4 stars. It is a book, and I get a little annoyed at the characters in books. They just sometimes are not, they're childish, which, you know, they're young adults, but so they should be childish, but you know, I prefer if they're more mature young adults. So let me read this because it is kind of a complicated story, so let's see what I've put down. Avery inherits an estate worth $42 billion and has no idea why, because she's never heard of the man who has given her this money. She has a stipulation, and that is that she must live in the mansion with the 4 grandsons who thought they would be inheriting the money. She has to live there for a year. So this all happens. She gets settled in, and she finds out that there is a game to be played. The man who who left her the money was a huge game player, and he used to play games with the boys, leave clues and riddles and all that kind of thing. And it turns out that one of those games has to be played now, and it takes place all throughout the house, and it is a humongous, like, probably the size of an airport building. The mansion, it's just huge. And so they take off going around the building, finding clues, and going further from there. Her relationship with the 4 boys is a little bit different from each one of them. It's more their parents who are really annoyed that... I was looking to see if I have any more 18s. No, it's their parents who are really not nice to her because, of course they wanted their sons to inherit money. But these are really smart, intelligent boys, and they're not disappointed at not getting the inheritance. So, an exciting adventure mystery. Even though it was young adult, the dialogue was realistic, and I loved all the characters. Lots of fun, and I'll continue on with the trilogy. So yes, I'm going to get myself the next book in the series, and then the 3rd one just came out, I believe, or is coming out shortly. So yes, that's it. Those are the books that I read in March. I forgot where we were for a minute there. So that's what I read in March, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about my books. Perhaps you found something that you would like to read. Perhaps there's something here that you have read. If you have, let me know what your opinion of the book is down below, or if there's a book here that has sparked your interest, let me know down below, and I'll see you down there. Until next time, bye!